known as the sweet science, part brain and part brawn. There is perhaps no sport as pure as the sport of boxing. Two combatants, alone in the squared circle, only one emerging victorious. It is the sport that has given us the grace of Ali, the power of Tyson, the elegance of Lewis. Today, we choose the best of the best, the greatest of them all. This is the lineup, boxing's greatest. In today's main event, the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. To help us choose the greatest pound-for-pound fighter, we've assembled a who's who panel of some of the most distinguished names in boxing. Acclaimed boxing writer, analyst, and historian, Steve Farhood. Former WBA lightweight champion, Ray Boom Boom Mancini. Academy Award-nominated actor and professional boxer, Mickey Rourke. One of the greatest heavyweight champions in history, the Eastern Assassin, Larry Holmes. All brought together by celebrated broadcaster, Fran Healy. Here now, the first contender for the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time.
Introducing in tonight's main event, our next contender for pound-for-pound greatest, Ray Robinson. Born Walker Smith Jr., but known in the history books as the original Sugar Ray, so skilled they created the mythical litmus test pound-for-pound comparison for this pugilist specialist, who retired in 1965 with a 173, 19-6 record. He blew them away at welterweight, mauled them at middleweight. His mobility, agility, hand speed, timing, all impeccable, all top tier. Contender for pound greatest, Sugar Ray Robinson.
Okay, guys, we're going to talk now about the best fighter pound for pound. And the first guy up is a guy that I played defense against. I know it's going to surprise you. I was at Fort Dix, New Jersey. I was on a post basketball team. And we were in a huddle before the game. It was an exhibition game. And the coach said, "You're going to cover Sugar Ray Robinson." I said, "The fighter?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I'll cover him from a distance." But anyways, everybody says pound for pound. Maybe that's where it all started. Maybe that term started with Sugar Ray Robinson.
I think it did. I think Ray Robinson's considered by most as the greatest pound for pound. What he accomplished is incredible. I don't think anybody moved up from welterweight to middleweight and fought everybody and anybody as well as he did and beat them the way he did.
At one point, his record was 130-something and 1, with the one loss coming to a middleweight, Jake LaMotta, when Robinson was a welterweight. And the reason I think today's fighters could never be what Ray Robinson was, or many of the other greats from that era, times have changed. Ray Robinson fought Jake LaMotta twice in 3 weeks. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Giving away 13, 15 pounds. And he fought a fight at the Garden in between those two fights with LaMotta. Now, you know, is Floyd Mayweather going to fight Manny Pacquiao twice in 3 weeks? Come on, the
15
economics.
15 rounders.
And 15 rounders. The economics
with
wouldn't
the little
allow it.
gloves.
But Robinson was great as a lightweight, great as a welterweight, great as a middleweight. Should have won the light heavyweight title, but pooped out in the heat in Yankee Stadium against Joey Maxim. I think he'll remain #1, at least on my list, forever.
I'm going to jump on the bandwagon, too, mainly because my favorite type of fighter is the kind of fighter that uses his speed, uses the feints, uses the jab, counter punches with speed. And if you look at, like, the legacy of after he fought, he's the one that sort of set the tone from lateral movement to using the jab.
Was he the first glamour fighter?
Ray Robinson was the first fighter to have an entourage,
Right.
as far as I know.
Well,
When he
he
went to
was-
Europe as middleweight champion,
Yeah.
And a Jerry curl.
yeah, way ahead of his time, right?
Yeah.
He had, you know, a masseuse and a hairdresser,
No, that
and a
was
stylist.
fun.
I mean, that was
That's-
unheard of
you
at
know
that
what, the
time.
rap. Yeah,
Early
yeah.
50s. You know? So he was unique in that regard.
When the lineup returns, the next contender for the title of pound-for-pound best fighter of all time. This is the lineup, boxing's greatest. Welcome back to the lineup, boxing's greatest, as we continue our search for the pound-for-pound best fighter of all time. Here now, the next contender.
Introducing in tonight's main event, our next contender for pound-for-pound greatest, Henry Armstrong. Stellar pugilist and also a juggler extraordinaire was Hammerin' Hank, who at the same time held the featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight crowns. Circa 1937, Armstrong was a winning machine. He won 46 straight bouts. This fighter didn't waste a second of any round. He used every second of those 3 minutes to impose his will upon foes, many of whom stood taller than Hammerin' Hank Armstrong, but all of whom respected his immense heart and veracity. Contender for pound greatest, Henry Armstrong.
Okay, we're still talking about pound for pound. Who's the best? Henry Armstrong is next up.
Well, now you're talking about my number one. My number one guy, Henry Armstrong, what he did is unprecedented. It will never be accomplished again. He won 3 world titles simultaneously in 1 year. He first beat Petey Sarin for the featherweight title, jumped up to welterweight, from a featherweight, now jumped up to the welterweight and beat Barney Ross, then dropped back down to the lightweight and beat Lou Ambers. Now, this is all within 12 months, period. But here's also what's incredible about that. He moved up to fight the middleweight, for the middleweight title against Seferino Garcia. And here's the funny thing about that. Most ringside observers said he won that fight. They called it a draw. But most people said he had Seferino Garcia hanging on the ropes at the end, but it was only a 10-round title fight, which they could at that time. Now, if it was 15, most people thought he would have stopped Garcia later on. That's incredible. From 126 to 147, back to 35, now go up to 160. You tell me how anybody in today's era would do that. I don't care. Manny Pacquiao ain't doing that. He ain't going up to middleweight. And Floyd Mayweather ain't doing that. Nobody would do what he did. To me, what he did is incredible, unprecedented. He is the best pound for pound to me.
He also, another reason today's fighters could never accomplish what the old-timers did, Henry Armstrong, in 1 calendar year, defended the welterweight title 11 times. Now, I'm not saying every fight was a war or against the best of competition. Of course, it wasn't. But nonetheless, 11 title defenses in 1 year.
Well, you know what? I tell you what. You know, you're a little bit older than him. Were you born then? How y'all get all this history about these guys? You know what I mean?
My father was a fighter that era. You remember? There, my father used to tell me about it. He loved Henry Armstrong, and just to show what type of class act he was. My father had a friend of his come up to visit him when he was training at Stillman's. And my father brought his friend over. He said, I want you to meet the greatest fighter, pound for pound in the world, Henry Armstrong. You know, Henry Armstrong, you know what he said to my father? I said, boom, boom, you can't say that because you never had a chance to fight me. But that's incredible. That's so much class. He said, no, you can't say that because you never had the chance to fight me.
And he was
Tell me what fighter would do that now.
Very exciting fighter. His style was to throw a million punches around, keep attacking. So he's a fan favorite as well as being an all-time great.
When the lineup returns, the next contender for the title of pound-for-pound best fighter of all time. This is the lineup, boxing's greatest. Welcome back to the lineup, boxing's greatest, as we continue our search for the pound-for-pound best fighter of all time. Here now, the next contender.
Introducing in tonight's main event, our next contender for pound greatest, Sugar Ray Leonard. He owned $1 million smile, but lest you be deceived by those gleaming pearly whites, if he got you in trouble, he craved to finish the job. A truly deserving heir to the moniker Sugar Ray. Leonard could move smartly, punch crisply, and maybe his top attribute was always wanting to test himself against the best and the brightest. He wasn't a businessman first. He was a fighter first and foremost. Contender for pound greatest, Sugar Ray Leonard.
And next up is Sugar Ray Leonard.
The early 80s, you can make the argument that it was as good an era as there ever was in boxing history. It was Larry dominating the heavyweights, and then a lot of the focus went to the lighter weights with Arguello and Ray and the great welterweights, the four Kings and Hagler. And Ray, to me, was the best fighter I've ever seen in my 37 years of covering boxing. I mean, he had an advantage on heavyweights in that he could fight in different weight classes, where Larry or others could only fight.
I'm going to agree with you because we spoke earlier about Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Leonard took a lot of what he observed, I think, and used that speed and used the lateral movement and fought with a game plan. You know, he had an A game or a B game going. You know, let's say you take a big, strong guy who's like an Oscar Bonavena. You're not going to sit there and try to slug him out. You got to outbox the dude, you know. And Ray was able to adapt, I think, that way and fight with his brains.
Ray Leonard is probably the finest fighter of my era. You know, again, Roberto was my hero from, you know, the 70s, early 80s. But Ray was probably the finest fighter because, like you said, the four Kings and Hagler, you know, Ray, Tommy, Duran, Benitez, and then, of course, Marvin. Ray's the only one to beat the other four. Yeah, he was special to watch. Handsome son of a gun, charismatic still. He's got that it factor. He always had it then, and he has it now. And the thing about him, though, he had a meanness about him in that ring that people don't understand. He was a mean guy in that ring. He wanted to take you out, and he wanted to hurt you and annihilate you.
You could see shades of that when he fought Benitez, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
there was very evenly matched. But then Ray dropped him in that 15th round, and then finally went on to decision.
No, Ray didn't take no prisoners because that's the way he fought. I mean, I got to meet Ray. We was both in Texas, and then we went to Bear Mountain in 1972 in the Olympics. He lost, and I lost. And I turned pro, but he waited on to the next Olympics. And Ray, even then, you know, had some mean street in him. He didn't show everybody what he was doing because he's a gentleman.
Right.
But he had some mean streets in him.
And when you talk about all-time pound for pound, non-heavyweights have a big advantage over fighters like Larry and heavyweights because you can only fight heavyweights. Right. Where Ray could fight a welterweight, then next thing you know, he's beating Marvin Hagler. Where are you going to go up from heavyweight? So that's a big advantage for non-heavyweights.
We've seen the first three challengers for the title of pound-for-pound best fighter of all time. Here now, the next contender.
Introducing in tonight's main event, our next contender for pound greatest, Muhammad Ali. You better have the goods when you call yourself the greatest. And luckily, the man born Cassius Clay had superior skills while engaging in thrillers with rivals Joe Frazier, George Foreman, and Ken Norton. His mouth was as potent a weapon as his stinging right hand. He was a poet inside and outside the ring, one who floated like a butterfly, stung like a bee, and always spoke up for his principles. The world shall never again know anyone like Ali. Contender for pound greatest, Muhammad Ali.
And now we talk about Muhammad Ali, pound for pound. What do you think?
He was only 1 pound. He was a heavyweight. He was a heavyweight. He couldn't go down. He couldn't go up. But what got Ali going is his mouth. I mean, he had the gift. He learned from whoever he learned from.
And he fought in an era when there were a lot of really great fighters around, a lot of great heavyweights around. Most of the guys he beat would be world champions today.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, but Ali was a good guy. Ali fought everybody, gave everybody opportunity to make some money. And everybody said Ali was a nice guy, but he was. But when he got in the ring, he wasn't. He'd knock you out. When we got in the gym as a sparring partner, if you're not ready out there, when he's ready, he beats you up. Yeah. I've seen him do that so many times to guys, but he couldn't do it to me.
And what made him so amazing to me is the first time around, he really had two distinct careers, one before his exile and one after. And what made him so special the first time around was his unbelievable reflexes and speed, and some of that was gone the second time around.
Well, that's when he had Plan B, which
Exactly, but his
which
toughness came
separates a
out.
lot of guys and gives some longevity to their career, and they have an opportunity to win fights that they shouldn't be winning.
He won with toughness the second time around.
One thing I got to get you out of Plan A and B, because we don't make no plans.
Yeah.
We just go with whatever happens. If it happens, that's
Well,
what
to be
we
able
go
to
for.
adapt,
Well, we
turn
adapt to it, but
direction.
we don't have that at the plan because we never know what we're going to do in the ring. When you go out there to fight, you're going to say, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It don't never happen.
As soon as you get tipped on, shit changes.
Well, but I'm saying where he once had all that speed, he could use his legs, he had to do something else, and what he did was he used his...
What happened with Ali was they made him do that.
Yeah.
Because they was getting to him, so he had to hold. He had to do that. He had to move because they was getting to him, and that's what made that change.
Larry, do you think he went into the fight with Foreman knowing that he was going to try that rope-a-dope trick? Or
no, but he tried.
He adjusted.
What happened is, because I worked with him for that, and what he did in the gym, because he was tired, he laid on the ropes. And, you know, when you got big Roy Williams, and he was 6'5", 250 pounds, banging on you, you laying on the ropes like that, come on, show me something. And he was mad at Roy Williams, and they were not getting along. So Roy was trying to kill him, and he would lay on the ropes. And he would do the same thing with me, because I was second after he finished training with Roy Williams, and he was tired. So what he's doing is laying on the ropes and trying to get some breath so he can breathe.
You got the tail end of Plan B.
You
That's all you got.
that wasn't no plan. I mean, he had to do that the rest if he wanted to do another round or get out of the ring. I think that's why that happened.
I think why Ali's on this list, pound for pound, because he didn't fight like typical heavyweight. He was the first heavyweight who fought with the speed of middleweight and who hit pretty damn good. So for a heavyweight to have that speed in combination of power, Ali was knocking guys out because he was a big puncher, but he catch him at the end of that punch, the snap, And I think that's why people put him on that list. Certainly, that's why I say he's the greatest, to me, he's the greatest heavyweight of all time, present company excluded. And the boxing goes as the heavyweights go. So is he the greatest fighter of all time? Probably, yeah.
Coming up on the lineup, the final contender for the title of pound-for-pound best fighter and the judge's decision. This is the lineup, boxing's greatest. Welcome back to the lineup, boxing's greatest, as we continue our search for the pound-for-pound best fighter of all time. Here now, the next contender.
Introducing in tonight's main event, our next contender for pound greatest, Joe Louis. He was heavyweight champ from 1937 to 1949 and will be regarded as a pound great as long as the earth spins. The Brown Bomber showed marvelous balance and could hurt you with either hand. His character was as highly regarded as his in-ring arsenal. The reporter Jimmy Cannon got it right when he said, Louis was a credit to his race, the human race. Even vanquished foes like Max Schmeling and Billy Conn had to agree. Contender for pound greatest, Joe Louis.
The Brown Bomber, Joe Louis, who was a national treasure.
Well, Joe Louis, again, to me, he's the top 3 heavyweight, number 2 on my list because there's no social significance, what he meant. Defending the title 25 times. Come on, man. It's unheard of. It only won second on the list is Larry. But again, the social significance he meant, going over during World War II, beating Max Schmeling in Yankee Stadium, not only beat him, crushing him in the first round. So it was like America overcoming, the Nazis. And he fought at a time of very racial times, racist society at that time. And Joe Louis was the heavyweight king, man. I mean, but again, that just shows you his greatness because they say, Joe Louis was the champion of all America, black and white.
And he fought at a time where there were a lot of good heavyweights around. But he had everything. He had this boxer style. He had the footwork, which people underestimate.
Great balance.
A great jab. He threw a straight, short right hand, a short left hook. He was the boxer's boxer,
Joe Louis had the personality to being the heavyweight champion of the world. He was a people's champion. You know, he wasn't just a fighting champion. He was a people's champion because he would do anything for anybody.
It's time now for our judge's decision on the title of pound for pound best fighter of all time.
All right, guys, time to show where we're going to pick #1 fighter.
Pound for pound.
Pound for pound.
Henry Armstrong. I think I mentioned earlier, nobody will ever be able to do what he did. First of all, because now if you move up to fight for another title, you have to, and you win it, you have to vacate the one that you have. So it'll never be done where you can hold 2 titles, more or less 3 simultaneously. But to do it 1 year, you have to understand, he fought for 4 world titles. He won 3, all within 1 calendar year. That's incredible.
I can't argue with Ray. I mean, Henry Armstrong was amazing. Ray Robinson gets my vote. Right fighter at the right time. Also, like Armstrong, excelled at more than 1 weight. One of the greatest crimes in boxing is there's no footage, there's no film of Ray Robinson as a welterweight. And everybody says he was at his best as a welterweight. But if you look at who he fought before he even won a title, all the way through the early 60s when he was fighting Paul Pender and Gene Fullmer and those guys, he fought LaMotta 6 times. LaMotta was much bigger. I mean, the quality of opposition for Ray Robinson is awesome. And ultimately, that's how you got to judge a fighter. Who did he fight?
I'm not saying nothing because they were all great to me, and they was none of them, I think, outshined the other. But all them guys that you just mentioned are heroes to me.
Besides Larry Holmes?
Yes, besides Larry.
You know what? I want to say Sugar Ray Robinson, but for me, really, it's a toss-up between Leonard and Robinson.
I'm going to say Joe Louis.
Wow.
You know, I like the social significance, and from all I heard, I've seen a video of him, but those punches were devastating, and you just hear, boom, guy goes down.
You know what? I would have said Joe Louis too, but I had to go with the personalities, and they all had great personalities that I met, and that's what I said. You know, it's hard for me to pick it.
It's always difficult to pick, but you know, since I'm being forced into this,
But
outside of Larry Holmes, I'm taking
but
Joe
if I
Louis.
was Joe, the brown bummer,
So he said Joe Louis. Joe Louis. Oh.
And so, the winner by decision, the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time, Joe Louis.
This has been the lineup, boxing's greatest.